this is Louise Campbell, co-host of Surfing the NASH Tsunami podcast. Today we're offering full conversations from episode 38, a repeat episode we posted for the first time in August 2020 on the roles that nurses, dietitians and physicians' assistants play in supporting patients with fatty liver diseases. This conversation, with me agreeing enthusiastically with Stephen Harrison's comments and focusing on the importance of Stephen's KISS rule, keep it simple, stupid, with the importance of keeping everything simple. Roger Green asked Stephen and me how often we believe the treater should see the patient. We each answer that 3 months seems the right visit frequency and discuss what we consider important elements for that visit. Peter Traber notes that the COVID pandemic is teaching us that visits can occur by video call, which reduces the cost of each visit in terms of money to healthcare system, time to the practitioner. Roger shares some of what he has learned as a patient who has lost significant amounts of weight on 3 occasions in his life. Roger finishes his comments by asking whether the formal healthcare system should take greater advantage of weekly and bi-weekly online assisted programs like Noom, which was in a dramatic growth spurt during the early days of the pandemic. I end this conversation by agreeing that this idea has value. Listening to this episode 3 years later, I was struck by how much the commentary still is accurate and even fresh today. It's worth a second listen, particularly for professionals who treat patients and manufacturers considering ways to support better treatment over time. So sit back, listen, learn and enjoy. And when you're done, join the dialogue in our LinkedIn discussion group. I just absolutely echo what Stephen says throughout that. It's about getting the right message to the right patient at the right time, and keeping it simple does work, because the more we complicate things, the more they get mixed messages. And I think we all have case histories where patients turn that round, and I think just keeping it simple, quick wins, doesn't have to be complicated, and using as much allied resources as we have is vital. Some patients will need way more than others, but it's having access to those. And sometimes the simple steps, the easy wins, just start the ball rolling, and patients get such reassurance and motivation from that. And going back to Stephen's smile curve, if you can keep them engaged, see them regularly enough, and I think telehealth will now make such a difference to that, is that these patients can be motivated extremely well and get great outcomes.
Roger Green.
Louise, how often is often enough, do you think? You said if you see them often enough. Stephen made the same point. I'm wondering for both of you, how often do you think is often enough?
I think Stephen said it a while back. About 3 months, I think, was his definition of the smile curve. And I think I'd reiterate that. I think anybody who I have seen with fatty liver disease where you can make that change, if you see them within 3 months of doing that change, it works very well. I saw an 18-year-old who was a rugby player, front row, came in, had a FibroScan, kilopascals 13.9, fat cap was 339. And he went away. Often they don't at that age because they're immortal, wanted to keep his place in rugby. And what we did was he was going to university, eating your typical high-carb diet, student diet, pizzas, crisps, beers. And what he did, he turned healthy for the 5 days a week. And what he did was keep it to the weekends. Well, he came back 8 weeks later, having lost 7 kilos. He had a CAP score of 229. And what was most reassuring was that his kilopascals fell back into the normal. So what we were seeing was probably purely inflamed liver as a result of the fat. So it can be done, and you don't have to give up everything all of the time, and you can take a step back. For every 2 steps forward, you might take a step backwards, but getting that positive momentum helps people maintain it in some way. So for me, I'd like to see them at the beginning 3 monthly and then probably 6 monthly, because you pick up the ones who do change and it really motivates. You pick up the ones who don't and they start to take notice.
Stephen Harrison.
I think Louise is spot on. 3 months is a good time to get these people back and just say, hey, what are your challenges? What are your concerns? What are your wins? And reiterate what you told them before. They always have questions. 3 months. Hey, what about this? I had a lady one time said, I did what you said. I quit eating French fries and potato chips, and I switched to sweet potatoes. And I said, whoa, okay, you did good there, but you switched to another potato. Yeah, but I heard sweet sweet potatoes, they have lots of vitamins and they're good for me. And that's true, but it's still a carb. We need to maybe not eat as many sweet potatoes either. And it was a little tweak like that really put her back on the point that she needed and continued to drive weight loss into the 6-month point. So it's always something little, and it's usually, interestingly enough, something little that derails these patients too. It's not that they don't want to do it, but something in life gets in the way, or they get confused about something and they don't have a way to follow up, and so they just bag.
I believe we really need to take advantage of what we've seen during this COVID crisis, and that is video chat appointments for patients, because it is expensive to go into the office each time, and I think we can do a lot more with video visits, and I would encourage people to look into that and utilize it.
Thanks, Peter. So let me come from a different perspective. As a guy who's lost 100 pounds over the course of his life, 50 once and probably 25 twice, and the second 25 was a year and a half ago, and that will stick because I'm getting too darned old to have to deal with trying to lose it again. I'm at an age where it wouldn't help me to have it. A couple of observations. First of all, patients frequently in those moments, one of the things they wrestle with is negative records or playbacks in their head. Can't do this, can't do that, whatever. Okay, and the negativity is the thing you're trying to overcome. The challenge to overcoming it is what happens after the day you blow it. And if you understand that it's just a day, and you can get it back the next day, that's very different than if the message you send yourself is, oh, I blew my diet. Because then people just go hog wild. And I've done this both ways. I've gone hog wild earlier in my life, which is why I had to do it again. And then I figured out that it's just a day. Number two, and I'm intrigued by the 3-month comment, because it's not clear to me that on a 3-month pulse, that's enough to know. Some people, all you need to do is give them a steer once every 3 months, and they're so motivated to do the right thing or so fearful of how sick they are that they'll do it. But if you have no conditions per se, you're just 50 pounds overweight, which is kind of where I was. The motivation isn't about fear. The motivation is about knowing it's the right thing to do. And things like self-doubt, negative self-talk, and all that stuff comes more into play. During the time I was losing all that weight, I was actually talking to my doctor, at that point it was my friend, every other week. And I think if I'd been talking to him every 3 months, I wouldn't have made it. As it was, I gained half of it back eventually. So I wondered whether, A, the people that you lose, or the people that aren't, as Louise, you said, you get the ones who are really sick. The ones who aren't really sick yet, who could be dealt with before they ever get to that kind of urgency. I wonder whether it isn't more about frequent small adjustments and people who can help you hear the head voice. I know because I have friends who've been really successful Weight Watchers. I know because, as I mentioned, my wife works for Noom, and I know she tracks in with people once a week on little things, but usually once a week. I wonder, should healthcare be taking advantage of services that are organized around weekly or biweekly? Is that one of the things we should look to do with allied health professionals and telehealth? Or do we really think that's not something we need to do unless patients ask for it? Or is there a fourth option?
I think absolutely we should be taking use of it. These are very, very well established apps and networks for some of them. I think everywhere that we can look that can support a patient in any disease that makes a change, that makes a difference to their outcome. And yes, patients getting diagnosed with liver disease are the minor, and getting through the healthcare system is actually quite difficult. But I think, and that's obviously one of the reasons that we deliver FibroScans, trying to get them into primary care. But this becomes part of a great cost-saving initiative. If you can prevent fatty liver disease, if you can prevent the obesity area that causes fatty liver disease, you can reduce diabetes. With diabetes, you reduce bariatric surgery. With diabetes, you can reduce vascular surgery and amputations. You can go on and on about what can be reduced. So the ability to cost-save downstream by using any mechanism that patients find useful, and it has to be about the patient and what works for them. And Noom is a very good example of a highly developed app and group, but there are lots of little ones out there that can be just as helpful, and some people like groups, some people don't, so everybody's an individual. And I think to be able to use that strength to make cost savings to healthcare throughout by changing people's lifestyles and empowering them to do so is absolutely vital. So I'd say yes, use everything.
And now, Louise Campbell.
We hope you've enjoyed this recording. If you do have any questions or comments about the content of this conversation or the entire episode, please put them in the review section of the page from which you downloaded this conversation, or send an email to questions@surfingnash.com. Roger and Sean will be back next week, while I'll be joining from Western Australia, where it will be the middle of the night when we record. The two topics we are considering both reflect recent publications of tremendous interest. Until then, stay safe, surf on, and we'll see you on the podcast. Bye-bye for now.